The emergency lights flashed red across the Galactic Council chambers. Ambassador Choi Seo-yoon stood at the speaker's podium, her hands gripping the edges so hard her knuckles turned white. Around her, representatives from 47 different species watched in silence. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few existed as floating clouds of gas inside containment suits. But all of them could see the anger on the human woman's face. "Nova Soul is gone," Seo-yoon said. Her voice was steady, but those who knew her could hear something breaking underneath. 2.3 million people. Erased in 6 hours. She pressed a button on the podium. Holographic images filled the air above the council floor. A beautiful planet with blue oceans and green continents appeared first. Cities sparkled on the night side. Then the image changed. Fire consumed everything. Orbital bombardment left nothing but craters and ash. The Kralix Dominion did this, Seo-yoon continued. Without warning. Without provocation. They wanted our colony world. So they took it. They didn't ask us to leave. They didn't give our people time to evacuate. They just killed everyone. Councillor Vex Nar rose from his seat. The Kralix representative was tall, with 4 arms and dark purple skin covered in ridged armor plates. His species had evolved as apex predators, and he still moved like one. The planet was in disputed territory, Vex Nar said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Your people should not have been there. Endway. Disputed? Seo-yoon's voice rose for the first time. We had a registered colony there for 30 years. The council approved our settlement. You signed the documents yourself. Times change, territory changes. The weak give way to the strong. Vex Nar sat back down. This is the natural order. Seo-yoon looked around the chamber. I call for an immediate military intervention. The Council has the authority and the obligation to respond to member state attacks. The Council President, an elderly Valorian named Kesh, floated forward. His species looked like wise old trees, with bark-like skin and leaves growing from their heads. We will vote on this matter, he announced. The vote took less than 5 minutes. 32 species voted against intervention. 11 voted in favor. 4 abstained. The Council issues a strong condemnation of the Kralix Dominion's actions, President Kesh announced. We recommend both parties engage in diplomatic negotiations to resolve this territorial dispute peacefully. Seo-yoon stood frozen at the podium. A territorial dispute. That's what they called genocide. She looked down at her communication device. A new message waited there, marked urgent. It was from Earth Command. The message was short. Captain Park, Ji-hoon, confirmed among casualties. All senior staff lost. No survivors found. Ji-hoon, her younger brother. He had been so excited to lead the Nova Soul Defense Force. He used to send her messages every week, telling her about the forests they were planting and the schools they were building. He would never send another message. Something inside Seo-yoon went very cold and very quiet. She reached up and unpinned the council insignia from her uniform. The small badge represented 89 years of human diplomatic service. 89 years of peace. She had worn it proudly every day for the last 12 years. Seo-yoon placed the badge on the podium carefully, as if it were made of glass. Humanity tried peace, she said softly. Everyone in the chamber leaned forward to hear her. We were good at it. We excelled at it. For nearly a century, we resolved conflicts, mediated disputes, and built bridges between species who hated each other. She looked directly at Vex Nar. We chose peace. You mistook that choice for weakness. Seo-yoon turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Ambassador, President Kesh called out. Where are you going? She stopped at the doorway and looked back. Home. To my people. Who will need a different kind of representative now? 2. You cannot simply leave the council, Kesh said, his leaves rustling with agitation. There are procedures, protocols. You should have thought about protocols before you abandoned us. Seo-yoon replied. In orbit above the Council Station, Admiral Kang Min-jun stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Indomitable. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many diplomatic meetings and not enough action. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. A priority message appeared on his command screen. It came directly from Earth's War Council, sealed with encryption codes that hadn't been used in almost 90 years. Admiral Kang opened the message and read it twice to make sure he understood. "Sir?" Kang Min-jun looked out the viewport at the peaceful stars. Somewhere out there, the Kraliks were celebrating their victory. They thought humanity would file complaints and write strongly worded protests. They thought humans were soft. The Admiral thought about all the weapons systems on his ship that had never been fired. He thought about the war games and combat drills his people had practiced for decades, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. He thought about the classified research stations and hidden military installations that the rest of the galaxy didn't know existed. Humanity had been peaceful. But humanity had never been harmless. "Transmit the following message to all Earth Defense Forces," Kang said. "Directive Phoenix is now active. Rules of engagement are suspended. Authorization code 0 day. His crew turned to look at him with wide eyes. They all knew what Directive Phoenix meant. It was the protocol for total war. "And send a message to the Kraliks Dominion," Kang added. "Tell them this. You killed our innocents. Now meet our soldiers." The bridge crew began working with quick, precise movements. Within minutes, coded signals flashed across human space. Ships that had patrolled borders peacefully for decades began powering up weapons that had been kept in standby mode. Research stations that studied peaceful applications of technology switched to military production. Soldiers who had trained for a war they never expected to fight received their deployment orders. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humanity. Peace had not made them weak. Peace had made them patient. And now, their patience was gone. Admiral Kang Min-jun watched the tactical display as his fleet prepared for war. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew this moment would change everything. The humans had tried to be good neighbors, good partners, good friends to the galaxy. That era was over. Now they would show the galaxy what humans had always been capable of becoming: warriors. General Yoon Hyun-woo walked through corridors that had been sealed for 87 years. The underground facility stretched deep beneath the mountains of Earth's Pacific region. Emergency lights flickered on as he passed, responding to his biosignature. Dust covered everything, but the equipment underneath remained pristine. Behind him, a dozen officers followed in silence. They were young, born in the era of peace. None of them had ever seen these rooms, but they had all heard the stories. "My grandfather built this place," General Yoon said, his voice echoing off metal walls. "After the resource wars ended, humanity looked at what we had done to ourselves and made a choice. We would seek peace with the galaxy. But we would not forget what we learned." He stopped at a massive door marked with faded warning symbols. The door required 3 different security scans before it opened with a deep groan of old machinery. Inside, weapons filled the warehouse. Not the clean, precise energy weapons most galactic species used. These were human weapons, designed by a species that had perfected warfare through thousands of years of practice. Dr. Shin Hae-jin waited inside, reviewing data on a holographic display. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back tightly. She had spent 40 years as the director of human military research, waiting for a war she hoped would never come. "General," she said, looking up from her work. "Project Revenant is ready for deployment. All systems checked and operational." "Show me," General Yoon ordered. Dr. Shin pulled up schematics on her display. "The other species think they know human military capability. They base that knowledge on what we've shown them during peacetime exercises. They're wrong." She highlighted different weapon systems as she spoke. "Kinetic kill vehicles that can accelerate to 0.99 light speed. Nanite swarms programmed for infrastructure disruption. Biological agents that target specific genetic markers. EMP weapons that can shut down electronics across an entire planet. One of the younger officers looked sick. These are war crimes. Under galactic law, he said. Galactic law didn't protect Nova Sol, Doctor, Shin replied coldly. These weapons were designed to end wars quickly and completely. The galaxy thinks we gave up this technology. We just hid it. Dumb you. General Yoon moved deeper into the facility. His officers followed, their faces growing paler with each room they entered. The galaxy had rules about warfare. Clean battles. Minimal civilian impact. Honor and dignity even in conflict. Humanity had learned different lessons. Humans had learned that wars were not won by being honorable. Wars were won by being willing to do what the enemy would not. Far across the galaxy, Commander Lee Da-eun prepared for her mission. She stood in the equipment room of a ship that officially did not exist. Around her, 19 other soldiers checked their gear in silence. They wore no uniforms, carried no identification, and would leave no trace. Ghost protocol is active, Da-eun said to her team. You all know the targets. 3 Kralix military stations, deep in their territory. High-value command and control centers. How do we get in? One soldier asked. Those stations have the best security in Kralix space. Da-eun smiled. It was not a kind smile. We get in because they think humans are weak. They think we've been peaceful for so long that we've forgotten how to be dangerous. That's their mistake. The mission took 48 hours. Ghost protocol teams infiltrated all 3 stations without being detected. They did not fight their way in. They walked in, disguised as maintenance workers, diplomatic staff, and trade representatives. The Kralix never suspected that humans could lie so effectively, could hide their intentions so completely. The sabotage was elegant and brutal. Critical systems failed at precisely calculated moments. Navigation computers gave false readings. Life support shut down in military sections while remaining active in civilian areas. Weapons, systems, locked, and couldn't be unlocked. When the Kralix finally realized what was happening, it was far too late. 3 of their most important military installations went dark. 30% of their deep space fleet lost communication and navigation capability. Ships drifted helplessly, unable to maneuver or call for help. Commander Lee Da-eun and her teams were gone before anyone knew they had been there. Ghosts, leaving only destruction behind. Back on Earth, the War Council convened in a room that had not been used since before the Galactic Council era. Holographic displays showed the galaxy, with human positions marked in blue and Kralix territory in red. Other species were marked in various colors, most of them neutral. Admiral Kang Min-jun appeared on one of the displays, transmitting from his flagship. The Pacific Defense Fleet is ready, General. We've moved into position, using dark matter corridors that the Kralix don't know exist. When they look for us, they'll see nothing. Earth's defensive grid is at maximum power, another officer reported. If the Kralix try to strike our home system, they'll face firepower they can't imagine. General Yoon studied the displays. The Kralix Dominion controlled a large section of the galaxy. They had a powerful military and subjugated a dozen other species. By conventional military thinking, humanity should be preparing for a defensive war. But humans did not think conventionally. Begin Phase 2, General Yoon ordered. Target their infrastructure. Power, water, food production, communications. Make every day harder than the last. Make them afraid to sleep. Across Kralix space, things began to fail. Water treatment facilities broke down, forcing rationing. Power grids experienced cascading failures. Food shipment schedules became unreliable. Communication networks developed strange interference. Nothing was obviously sabotage. Everything looked like accidents, maintenance failures, bad luck. But the effects accumulated. Kralix citizens who had celebrated their victory over Nova Sol now stood in lines for water. They ate rationed food and sat in the dark when the power failed. The Galactic Council sent diplomatic missions to Earth, trying to understand what was happening. They found Earth's major cities empty of military personnel. Research stations gave automated responses. Defense installations appeared abandoned. Where did they go? President Kesh demanded, his leaves rustling with agitation. Where are the humans? No one could answer. Earth's military had vanished. Billions of humans remained in their cities, going about their lives normally, but the soldiers, the ships, the weapons all gone. Moved to locations the galaxy didn't know existed. The Krolix leadership demanded answers. They sent warships to Earth's borders, trying to provoke a response. The human ships they encountered retreated without firing, leading the Krolix deeper into what they thought was human territory. Warlord Thraknor watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. The humans run. They hide. They know they cannot face us directly. His military advisors were not so certain. Sir, we've lost contact with 37 ships. Our infrastructure is failing across 12 colonies, and we still don't know where their main fleet is located. Find them, Thraknor ordered. Find them and destroy them. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Krolix dominion. But finding an enemy who did not want to be found was harder than expected. The Krolix sent scout ships into human territory. The ships never returned. Search parties vanished. Monitoring stations went silent. And then, on the 48th day after Nova Sol's destruction, Admiral Kang Min-jun sent a message. It broadcast across every communication channel in Krolix space. Impossible to block or filter. The message showed images of Nova Sol burning. Then it showed images of every Krolix military installation, every command center, every weapons depot, precise locations, security details, defensive capabilities, everything. Admiral Kang's face appeared on the screens. You killed 2.3 million innocents, he said. Now we show you what happens when you wake up, soldiers. We know where everything is. We know how to destroy it all. And we're just getting started. The broadcast ended. Across Krolix space, military commanders looked at the data with growing horror. The humans knew everything. Every secret, every defense, every weakness. Warlord Thraknor stared at his tactical display and finally understood his mistake. Humanity had not been weak. They had been sleeping. Now they were awake. And they were very, very angry. Admiral Han Taeyang stood on the bridge of the Shadow Fleet's command ship. Around him, displays showed 18 vessels, moving in perfect formation through the dark spaces between stars. These ships did not appear on any registry. They used technology that bent light around their hulls, making them invisible to conventional sensors. Target confirmed, his tactical officer reported. Krolix supply convoy, 12 ships carrying food and medical supplies to their frontier colonies. Admiral Han studied the convoy's route. The Krolix ships moved in standard formation, confident in their military superiority. They had no idea that human ships had been shadowing them for 3 days, calculating attack vectors and escape routes. Do they have military escorts? Han asked. 2 warships, standard defensive configuration. They're not expecting trouble in their own territory. Han nodded slowly. The old rules of warfare said you did not attack supply convoys carrying humanitarian goods. Those rules assumed both sides wanted to minimize suffering. Humanity was no longer interested in minimizing anything. Fire solution prepared, the weapons officer announced. All ships ready. Wes. Execute Doctrine Reaper, Admiral Han ordered. The Shadow Fleet attacked from impossible angles. They had used gravitational slingshots around dead stars to build velocity, coming in faster than Krolix sensors could track. Kinetic weapons struck with devastating precision. The 2 warships exploded before they could raise shields. The supply ships tried to scatter, but they were too slow. Within 90 seconds, the entire convoy was debris. Admiral Han did not celebrate. He simply marked the target as completed and moved to the next one. War was not about glory. War was about making the enemy suffer until they begged for peace. On the colony world of Kralix Prime's moon, Lieutenant Bei Minji worked in a hidden facility with 40 other survivors from Nova Sol. They had escaped the bombardment by being off-world during the attack. Now they had volunteered for a special project. "How many can we build?" Minji asked the engineer beside her. "With current resources?" "About 2,000 per week. More, if we get additional materials." Minji looked at the weapon on the assembly table. It looked like a standard missile, but its casing was engraved with names, thousands of names. Every person who died on Nova Sol had their name carved into human weapons. "These are memorial weapons," Minji explained to new volunteers. "Every target they hit, every enemy they destroy, it's done in memory of someone we lost." The Kralix thought they could erase us. Instead, they made us eternal. The weapons were distributed to human forces across the galaxy. Soldiers fought with renewed determination, knowing that each weapon they fired carried the names of the innocent dead. In Kralix territory, something worse than military defeat was spreading. Fear. Kralix citizens woke up to find their neighborhood power stations destroyed. Water treatment plants failed, not from attacks, but from biological agents that ate through the filtration systems. Food shipments arrived spoiled, contaminated by nanites too small to see. The Kralix military tried to protect their people, but they could not defend against an enemy they could not see. Human special forces moved through Kralix worlds like ghosts, striking infrastructure targets and vanishing before reinforcements arrived. Worse, the humans had begun a psychological warfare campaign that no galactic species had ever seen. Every Kralix communication device received messages. Videos of Nova Sol burning played on their screens. Messages from human children, recorded moments before they died, asking why the Kralix were killing them. Images of mass graves and destroyed cities. "Turn it off!" Kralix citizens begged their government. "Make it stop," but the broadcasts could not be stopped. Human hackers had infiltrated every communication network. The messages played constantly, day and night. Sleep became difficult. Normal life became impossible. Warlord Thrak Nor called an emergency meeting of his military command. Around the war table, his finest generals looked tired and afraid. "Casualty report," Thrak Nor demanded. 67% of our deep space fleet is non-operational," the fleet commander reported. "Not destroyed, just disabled. Systems, failures, navigation problems, communications blackouts. We can't figure out what's wrong. Ground forces, 42 installations have been destroyed. 100 more have been infiltrated. We don't know how many human agents are operating in our territory. And our infrastructure?" The civilian administrator looked down at his datapad. 14 colonies are experiencing food shortages. 8 have water rationing. Power failures are happening across all territories. Our citizens are demanding protection. Thrak Nor slammed his fist on the table. "We are the Kralix Dominion. We are the strongest military power in this sector. How are we losing to one species?" An intelligence officer spoke quietly. "Because they do not fight like we do, Warlord. They do not care about honor or rules. They target everything: military, civilian infrastructure, supply lines, communications, even our morale. This is total war." "Call. Then we respond with total war," Thrak Nor decided. "Prepare an attack on Earth itself. If we destroy their homeworld, they will have to surrender." The fleet commander shook his head. "Sir, we don't know where their main fleet is positioned. Every time we send scouts toward Earth, they disappear. We've lost 63 reconnaissance ships in the last month. Then send more ships. We've tried. Sir, they're hunting us. In our own territory, we're being hunted." It was true. Admiral Kang Minjun's fleet had spent months mapping every Kralix installation, every ship route, every defensive position. Now they used that knowledge to strike and fade, hit and run, destroy and vanish. The humans fought like predators, patient and calculating. They did not seek glorious battles. They sought absolute victory through the slow strangulation of Krallick's capability. 3 months after Nova Sol's destruction, Warlord Thraknor finally attempted to negotiate. He sent envoys to human space carrying peace proposals. The envoys returned 2 days later, unharmed but shaken. They carried a single message. Nova Sol had 2.3 million people, the message read. You have 2.3 million apologies to deliver. Start counting. In the Galactic Council chambers, other species watched the war with growing horror. The Kralliks had always been aggressive, but they had never faced an opponent like humanity. We should intervene, some council members suggested. This has gone too far, but others disagreed. The Kralliks started this. Let them finish it. Secretly, several species began providing intelligence to human forces. Kralliks' ship movements, military installations, supply routes all were quietly shared with humanity. No one wanted to be the next species that made humans angry. Councillor Vexnar, who had dismissed Nova Sol as a territorial dispute, tried to organize a coalition against humanity. He sent messages to military powers across the galaxy, warning them about the human threat. No one responded. Everyone had seen what happened when you attacked humans. No one wanted to be next. Admiral Han Taeyang continued his campaign of terror. His shadow fleet struck at psychological targets, now destroying monuments, cultural centers, historical sites, nothing with significant military value, but everything that gave Krallick citizens pride in their civilization. You're destroying their spirit, his first officer observed. That's the point, Admiral Han replied. Military defeat is temporary. Cultural trauma is permanent. When this is over, the Kralliks will never forget what happened when they made humanity angry. Back on Earth, General Yoon Hyun Woo reviewed casualty reports. Human losses were minimal. A few hundred soldiers killed in special operations. A handful of ships damaged in combat. Against those losses, the Kralliks had lost thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, and the stability of their entire civilization. Is this what we've become? One of his young officers asked. Destroyers? General Yoon looked at the images of Nova Sol that still played on screens across the galaxy. We became what they forced us to become. The Kralliks wanted to see human weakness. Instead, they found human strength. And they will never make that mistake again. Lieutenant Bei Minji finished engraving the last name on her memorial weapon. 2.3 million names, spread across millions of weapons, all finding their way to Krallick's targets. She thought about her friends who died on Nova Sol. They had been teachers, farmers, engineers, children. They had been building a peaceful world. Now their names flew through space on weapons of war, ensuring that their deaths would be answered. Rest easy, Minji whispered to the names under her fingers. We remember, and we are making them pay. The surrender request came on a day when Earth's sun shone bright over the Pacific Command Center. General Yoon Hyun Woo read the message 3 times, making sure he understood correctly. They want peace terms, he told his assembled officers. Warlord Thraknor is offering conditional surrender. What conditions? Admiral Kang Minjun asked. He had returned to Earth for the first time in months, his fleet having completed its systematic destruction of Krallick's military capability. They want to keep their government intact. They want to maintain military forces for defensive purposes. They want assurances that we will not occupy their territory. General Yoon looked up from the message. They want mercy. General Yoon. They want mercy. The room fell silent. Every officer present had lost someone on Nova Sol. Every one of them had spent months fighting a war that should never have happened. Send our response, General Yoon said. The reply reached Krallick's Prime within hours. Warlord Thraknor read it with shaking hands. His advisors watched as their leader, who had boasted about crushing humanity, realized the depth of his failure. They refuse, Thraknor said quietly. They want everything. Total surrender. Then we fight, one general suggested. but his voice lacked conviction. With what? Another asked. We've lost 2/3 of our fleet. Our colonies are starving. Our citizens live in fear. We have nothing left to fight with. Thraknor looked out the window at his capital city. Once, it had been a symbol of Krallick's power. Now, rolling blackouts kept parts of it dark, even during the day. Food riots broke out every week, and in the sky, hidden somewhere above the clouds, human ships waited. Prepare for invasion, he ordered. If they want our world, they'll have to take it. Colonel Im Sung-ho led the first wave of ground forces onto Krallick's Prime. His transport ships descended through atmosphere that had not seen war in 400 years. The Krallicks had been conquerors for so long, they had forgotten what it felt like to be conquered. Remember the rules of engagement, Colonel Im told his troops as they prepared for landing. Civilians are not targets. Military personnel who surrender are to be treated according to standard protocols. Anyone who fights will be eliminated with extreme prejudice. The landing was not the bloody battle the Krallicks had prepared for. Human forces used technology that let them see through buildings, identify weapons, and target enemy combatants with precision. Krallick soldiers found themselves facing an enemy that knew where they were before they could fire a shot. By the end of the first day, Krallick's Prime's capital city was under human control. Krallick's military forces had either surrendered or retreated to defensive positions outside the city. Civilian casualties were minimal, a few dozen caught in crossfire, compared to the millions of humans who had died on Nova Sol. Colonel Im established his command center in what had been Warlord Thraknor's palace. He found the warlord still there, refusing to flee. I will not run, Thraknor said. If you are here to execute me, do it quickly. We're not going to execute you, Colonel Im replied. We have something worse in mind. We have something worse in mind. At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Quan Ji-woo stood before the assembled representatives. She was younger than Choi So-yoon had been, and she had none of Seo-yoon's diplomatic warmth. She had been chosen specifically because she did not care about making friends. The Krallick's dominion has surrendered, she announced. Their military is defeated. Their government has collapsed. Their territory is now under human administration. President Kesh's leaves rustled nervously. Surely you mean temporary peacekeeping operations? Until stability can be restored? No, Ambassador Quan said. We mean administration, complete control, for as long as we decide it's necessary. This is unacceptable. Councillor Vexnar protested. The council must have oversight over occupation operations. Ambassador Quan looked at him with cold eyes. Where was the council when Nova Sol burned? You voted for strong condemnation. Well, this is what human condemnation looks like. She pulled up a holographic display showing Krallick's territory. Red zones marked areas under human control. We have established martial law across their entire civilization. Every military installation is occupied. Every government official has been removed from power. Every communication system is monitored. You cannot do this, several council members protested simultaneously. We already have, Ambassador Quan replied. And if anyone tries to interfere, we'll assume you're supporting the Krallicks. I don't think you want to find out what happens then. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some species supported humanity's actions. Others called it tyranny. But no one was willing to actually oppose it militarily. On Krallick's Prime, General Yoon arrived to oversee the next phase of occupation. He brought with him a special punishment for Warlord Thraknor. You killed 2.3 million people, General Yoon told the captured warlord. Now, you will acknowledge each one. Thraknor was brought to a broadcast station and given a list. 2.3 million names, printed in small text that filled thousands of pages. He was ordered to read each name aloud, on live broadcast across all Krallick's territory. This is torture, Thraknor protested. This is justice, General Yoon corrected. You decided those people were nothing, just numbers. Now you will make them real. You will say every name. You will acknowledge every life you destroyed. The broadcast began. Thraknor, former ruler of the Kralix Dominion, sat before cameras and began reading names. Human names. In a human language he struggled to pronounce. Children's names, parents' names, grandparents' names, Park Min-soo, Kim Da-hee, Lee Jae-hyun, Choi Mina. The broadcast ran continuously. Thraknor was allowed breaks for food and rest. But the reading continued. Hour after hour. Day after day. Kralix citizens watched in horror as their former leader, the warrior who had promised them victory, read the names of those he had killed. It took 11 days to read all 2.3 million names. By the end, Thraknor's voice was barely a whisper. But every name was heard. Every life was acknowledged. Dr. Shin Hee-jin arrived during the reading's final days. She came to Kralix Prime carrying a device in a sealed container. The device was small, barely larger than a briefcase. But it represented the ultimate expression of human revenge. This is what we developed in case conventional warfare failed, she explained to General Yoon. A biological agent specifically targeted to Kralix genetic markers. If we release it into their atmosphere, their entire species will be sterilized within a generation. General Yoon looked at the device for a long time. Can other species be affected? No, it's completely specific to Kralix DNA. The rest of the galaxy would be untouched. And we're certain it works? We've tested it extensively. It would be final. Admiral Kang Min-jun arrived the next day. The three highest-ranking human military leaders stood together in the occupied palace, looking at a device that could commit genocide without firing a single shot. We could end them, Admiral Kang said quietly. Completely. No risk of future conflict. No chance of revenge. We could. General Yoon agreed. The question is, should we? End quote. Would we you? Would we you? End quote. Would we you? Dr. Shin checked her data displays. If we're going to use it, now is the optimal time. Their population is concentrated, their defenses are down, and we control their atmosphere. The three leaders fell silent. Outside, Kralix citizens went about their lives under human occupation. They were defeated, broken, afraid, but they were alive. I have the authorization codes, Admiral Kang said. He held up a data chip. Earth Command gave them to me before I left. One transmission, and we activate the device. General Yoon thought about Nova Sol. He thought about the children who had burned, the families who had been destroyed, the peaceful world that had been erased in 6 hours. He thought about what humanity had become in response. No, he said finally. We won't use it. Sir? Dr. Shin looked surprised. This is the ultimate deterrent. No species will dare attack humanity if they know we have this capability. They'll know we have it, General Yoon said, but they'll also know we chose not to use it. That's more powerful than actually using it. Admiral Kang nodded slowly. It sends a message. We could destroy them completely. We have the means and the justification, but we're still human. That has to mean something. Broadcast the existence of the device, General Yoon ordered. Show the galaxy what we could have done. Then destroy it, publicly. Let everyone know that human mercy exists, but it must be earned. The Kralix will live, but they'll live, knowing how close they came to extinction. The next day, the entire galaxy watched as Dr. Shin demonstrated the device's capabilities in a controlled test. A small island on an uninhabited moon was exposed to the agent. Every plant genetically similar to Kralix biology withered and died. Then, in front of cameras from every major galactic news service, Admiral Kang Min-jun destroyed the device. It was crushed, incinerated, and scattered. Humanity fought to survive, he announced. We won. Now we choose to be better than those who attacked us. The Kralix will live, but they will live as we dictate, under our terms, until we are satisfied that justice has been served. Across Kralix Prime, citizens who had watched their world fall realized something important. The humans could have killed them all. But they chose mercy instead. It was a mercy that came with chains and occupation and shame. But it was still mercy. And it was more than the Kralix had shown Nova Sol. 6 months after the surrender, Ambassador Choi Seo-yoon returned to the Galactic Council chambers. The room fell silent when she entered. The last time she had been here, she had been a diplomat, pleading for justice. Now she wore a different uniform military dress blues, with decorations earned in the war she had helped trigger. Ambassador Choi, President Kesh began carefully. We were not expecting your return. I was not expecting to come back. Seo-yoon replied. She walked to the speaker's podium, the same place where she had once placed her council insignia in resignation. But humanity has decided the galaxy needs to understand our position clearly. So I've returned to explain it. She activated a holographic display. It showed a document titled, The Terra Doctrine. For 89 years, humanity believed in peace through cooperation. Seo-yoon began. We believed that diplomacy and mutual respect would protect us. Nova Sol proved us wrong. So we developed a new approach. The document expanded, showing multiple sections. Council members leaned forward to read, though some already looked nervous about what they might find. First principle. Seo-yoon read aloud. Any attack on human civilian populations triggers immediate and unlimited military response. No warnings, no negotiations, just consequences. This is too aggressive, several council members protested. Nova Sol was not aggressive? Seo-yoon's voice cut through the protests. 2.3 million civilians dead in 6 hours was acceptable. But our response is too aggressive? And, she continued. Second principle. Council neutrality equals council complicity. If humanity is attacked and the council fails to act, we will assume the council supports our enemies. You cannot force the council to take sides. President Kesh objected. We're not forcing anything, Seo-yoon said calmly. We're simply clarifying our position. Stay neutral if you want, but understand that we will remember who helped us and who abandoned us. Third principle. Humanity reserves the right to maintain military forces sufficient to protect our interests anywhere in the galaxy. We will not ask permission. We will not accept limitations, and we will not allow any species to threaten human safety. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species called it reasonable. Others called it intimidation. But Seo-yoon waited patiently for silence before continuing. Fourth principle. Human territory is defined by human presence, not council agreements. Any world where humans live is under our protection. Any attack on those worlds is an attack on humanity itself. This could apply to hundreds of worlds, someone pointed out. Exactly, Seo-yoon agreed. We will not be confined, we will not be limited, and we will not allow another Nova Sol. And what if we reject these terms? Councillor Vexnar asked. His voice was quieter than it had been before the war, less certain. Seo-yoon looked at him directly. Then you reject them. But understand what that means. It means you believe the current galactic order, the one that failed to protect Nova Sol, is acceptable. We don't. So we will operate outside that order if necessary. She closed the document. The Terra Doctrine is not a proposal. It's a statement of how humanity will conduct itself from now on. The Council can accept it or not. That's your choice. But we will follow it regardless. Captain Song-yuna sat in the audience section, watching the Council's reaction. She was one of only 300 survivors from Nova Sol who had been off-world during the attack. For 6 months, she had worked with human forces to ensure the Kralix paid for their crimes. Now she stood and spoke without waiting for recognition. I lost everyone, she said. Her voice carried across the silent chamber. My parents, my husband, my 2 children, all dead. Because the Kralix wanted our world, and the Council wouldn't stop them. She walked toward Councillor Vexnar's seat. You called it a territorial dispute. You said the weak give way to the strong. Those words killed my family. Vexnar looked away, unable to meet her eyes. So now humanity is strong, Yuna continued. Now we're the ones everyone fears. Because maybe next time someone wants to commit genocide, they'll remember what happened to the Kraliks and think twice. She returned to her seat. The council remained silent. What could they say? They had created this situation through their own inaction. Ambassador Seo Yun pulled up new images on the display. Humanity is establishing what we call the Guardians of Peace, a permanent military force that will patrol regions where conflicts are likely. We will prevent attacks like Nova Sol before they happen. This is unilateral military action, President Kesh protested. The Council should control all peacekeeping operations. The Council had its chance to keep peace, Seo Yun replied. You failed. Now we'll do it ourselves. Over the next hour, 23 species formally accepted the Terra Doctrine. They signed agreements acknowledging humanity's right to maintain forces in their space and to respond to threats as they saw fit. 18 species refused to sign, calling it an infringement on their sovereignty. We respect your decision, Ambassador Seo Yun told the rejecting species. But understand that our forces will operate regardless. We're informing you as a courtesy, not asking for permission. In Kralik's territory, the occupation continued. Human administrators worked to rebuild infrastructure while maintaining strict control. Kralik's citizens learned to live under rules imposed by the species they had tried to destroy. Warlord Thraknor, having finished reading 2.3 million names, was given an unexpected assignment. Instead of execution or imprisonment, he was sent to tour Kralik's worlds as a living reminder of the cost of aggression. You will visit every colony, General Yun told him. You will speak to your people. You will show them images of Nova Sol. You will explain what you did and why it was wrong. You want me to betray my own species? Thraknor asked. We want you to save your species, General Yun corrected. Your people need to understand that the old ways are gone. Strength through conquest. Expansion through force. That era is over. Help them understand that, or watch them disappear. Thraknor's first speech was broadcast across the Kralik's dominion. He stood before a crowd of his own people, no longer a warlord but a cautionary tale. I led us to destruction, he told them. I believed humanity was weak because they chose peace. I did not understand that peace was their gift to the galaxy, not a sign of inability to wage war. He showed images of Nova Sol burning, then images of Kralik's Prime under occupation. I thought we could take what we wanted without consequences. I was wrong, and 2.3 million humans died because of my arrogance. Now our own civilization exists only because humans chose mercy we did not deserve. Some Kralik citizens threw things at him, others wept, but all of them listened. 20 years later, the Galactic Council operated under a new reality. The Terra Doctrine had become the foundation of galactic security. Human warships patrolled borders, investigated conflicts, and stopped potential genocides before they could begin. Not everyone was happy with the arrangement. Some species called it human imperialism. Others said humanity had become the very thing they had fought against, an aggressive military power imposing its will on others. But no major conflicts had occurred in 20 years. No species had attempted another Nova Sol. And slowly, grudgingly, the galaxy adapted to the new order. Ambassador Choi So-yun retired from council service at age 72. She had spent 20 years rebuilding human diplomatic relationships, though always backed by the knowledge that human warships waited behind every negotiation. Her final act was to attend the dedication of New Nova Sol. The colony had been rebuilt on the same world where the original had been destroyed. Human architects had incorporated memorials into every building, ensuring no one would forget what had happened there. Admiral Kang Min-jun attended the ceremony, now an old man with white hair and tired eyes. He stood beside Seo Yun as they watched construction robots work on new buildings. Do you think we did the right thing? He asked quietly. We did what we had to do, Seo Yun replied. The galaxy forced us to choose between being victims or being powerful. We chose power. And the cost? Seo Yun thought about her brother Ji-hoon, whose name was engraved on a memorial wall nearby. The cost was paid on the day Nova Sol burned. Everything after that was just collecting what we were owed. General Yoon Hyun-woo, now in his 90s, gave the dedication speech. His voice was weak, but his words carried weight. We built this colony as a memorial, he said, not just to those who died, but to what humanity lost and what we gained. We lost our innocence. We lost our belief that peace alone could protect us, but we gained the strength to ensure no other human colony would burn. He looked out at the assembled crowd, humans, Kraliks, and representatives from dozens of other species. Some call us tyrants, some call us saviors. I think we're simply survivors who learned a terrible lesson. Peace is not a shield. Peace is a choice that must be defended with strength. Captain Song Yuna, now an old woman herself, placed the final memorial plaque. It listed every name from the original Nova Sol, including her family. Below the names, a simple inscription: they chose peace. We chose to remember. Never again. As the sun set on New Nova Sol, human warships maintained their positions in orbit. They would always be there now, watching, ready. The galaxy had taught humanity that peace required power. Humanity had learned that lesson well. In her retirement home on Earth, Ambassador Choi Seo-yoon recorded her final log entry. She was old now, her hair white and her hands shaky, but her voice remained clear. We proved we could destroy, she recorded. We proved we could dominate. We proved we could make the galaxy fear us. Those were the easy parts. She paused, looking out her window at Earth's peaceful sky. The hard part is proving we can still build, proving we can use our power wisely, proving that we're not just another aggressive species with better weapons. I don't know if we'll succeed at that, but I know we have to try. Because if we become the monsters we fought against, then the Kraliks won after all. They didn't destroy our bodies, but they would have destroyed our souls. She ended the recording and closed her eyes. Outside, human civilization continued its expansion across the galaxy. New colonies were built, new relationships formed, new challenges faced, but always, in orbit around every human world, warships waited. A reminder of what humanity had learned in fire and blood. Peace was precious, but only the strong could preserve it. The galaxy had called humanity weak. They had proven otherwise. Now, they had to prove they could be something more than just another military power. That would be the work of generations to come. But for now, humanity had secured its place among the stars. Not through diplomacy alone, not through peace alone, but through the demonstration of what happened when a peaceful species decided it had had enough. The Kraliks had wanted to see human weakness. Instead, they discovered human strength. And the galaxy would remember that lesson for 1,000 years.